Hello YouTube, my name is NerosCinema for Call of Duty World War II. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So you guys know what today is. It's Thursday, May 3rd, which means that Call of Duty World War II is now officially 6 months old. 181 days ago today, the Call of Duty series returned to World War II. It returned to boots on the ground, and so I thought it would be fun to just sit down and review Call of Duty World War II and discuss how it has progressed from launch all the way up until today. Going back to the beginning here, I think it's safe to say that this game had a pretty rocky launch. I think the phrase I used back in November was disaster, and that was definitely warranted. The launch of this game was a freaking disaster. Servers were crashing left and right. People couldn't sign in and play. When they were able to sign in, they would either have like a 30-minute long loading screen, or some people had to wait in these very long queues just to get into the multiplayer itself. It was a very rocky launch, and probably the worst one that we've ever had since maybe like the Modern Warfare 2 days. I remember we were all joking back in November how they kept saying they want to take the series back to its roots, and they kind of did that because back in the day, Call of Duty launches were terrible every single year, whereas over the past 5 years or so, it's actually been kind of smooth, but definitely not with Call of Duty World War II. It was clear that fans were excited that Call of Duty was returning to its roots because there were so many people trying to sign in at one time that Activision's servers couldn't handle it. And we're not talking about like a small-time game company out there. We're talking about Activision. They can handle most things, but they could not handle the influx of people who were trying to play Call of Duty World War II. And even though we didn't know it at the time, World War II's launch would be record-breaking for the PlayStation 4, and within a couple of hours or something like that, World War II became the best-selling game of 2017. After a few days, the server issues started to clear up a little bit, and we were finally able to actually play the game, and that's when fans started to take notice of some of the other issues that the game had, and the biggest one, of course, was the lack of multiplayer maps. So, to this day, I still have no freaking idea what was going through Sledgehammer's head when they decided to ship this game with 9 standard multiplayer maps, because most dedicated Call of Duty fans played the beta. Even like on-the-fence Call of Duty fans probably played the beta, and during the beta, they gave us 4 maps to play, which means that when the game came out in November, we only had 5 new multiplayer maps to explore, and because of that, people got bored pretty quickly. There were lots of other issues at launch, like the headquarters being empty for nearly a month, and supply drops randomly disappearing, but the biggest one was the lack of multiplayer maps, and I think that if Sledgehammer could go back in time and do it all over again, I think that they would have given us 12, maybe 13 multiplayer maps at launch, and simply pulled their resources to revamp the various map packs that they had planned. So for those that don't know, they planned for these DLC map packs well in advance. Like DLC 1 was finished back when we were playing the beta, and we knew that, and this is what makes people so frustrated. We knew this because we looked into the game files of the PC version of the beta, we found the map Valkyrie, we found the map Occupation, and then when the game came out in November, neither of those maps were there. We were left with 9 standard multiplayer maps, only 5 of them being new ones that we didn't see back during the beta, and that turned a lot of fans off the game. They were frustrated with that fact because it seemed like they cut content from the base game to repackage it as DLC, and to be fair, that's pretty much what they did. There's no reason DLC 1 maps could not have been there at launch, but thankfully Sledgehammer decided to somewhat correct their mistake by giving us free multiplayer maps in between DLC events, which is something that we've rarely seen in the Call of Duty franchise. So we got Winter Carentan during the Winter Siege event, and Shipments 1944 during Operation Shamrock and Awe, and while neither of those maps are original, it's important to remember they're not giving out free original content. Both of those maps are remakes from previous games. Free maps are free maps though, right? And they definitely added some much needed variety to the Call of Duty World War II multiplayer, so it was rocky at launch, but now that we have these maps added there and they're actually there in the rotation, it feels a lot better, especially now that we're finally getting the DLC maps as they are releasing. But speaking of variety, I think that's something that we should discuss further here in this video, because over the past couple of months, Sledgehammer has really been adding a ton of content to the game to keep things interesting. Since launch, they have added 15 new guns, 4 new melee weapons, 2 multiplayer maps, 3 if you count the headquarters, but I don't really count the headquarters as a full-on multiplayer map, and of course, they've added a bunch of new game modes. That's not even taking into consideration all of the other supply drop content that they've added and all the other little things like contracts and orders and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the big things that Call of Duty World War II has going for it right now, because this year, more so than in previous years, there is always something happening. There's always something new, something going on, right? There's always like an update being teased, or a major leak happening, or new weapons that are being added to the game, or a new event that's coming out. And that kind of dedication to the player base has been really fun to see. I discussed it in a recent video, and I will bring it up again here. I think these updates are coming in large part because of all the competition that Call of Duty has this year, but regardless of the motivations that Activision and Sledgehammer have, it's great to see a game evolving and changing as much as Call of Duty World War II is. I often read comments on my videos that say, Nero, I love your videos, but I don't play Call of Duty anymore, and I find that to be really weird, right? Because on one hand, I'm flattered that people enjoy my content enough to watch videos of a game they don't even play, but on the other hand, it's like, dude, you need to try the game out. If you haven't played World War II in a couple of months, the game is so much different now than it was back then, and if you stopped playing in like November or December, you're not even going to recognize this game's multiplayer, because ever since November, they have given us countless weapon balance updates. A lot of the weapons are much different now than they were previously. They've changed up health regeneration, they've changed sprint out times, they've changed up ADS speeds and weapon sounds, they've revamped supply drops and supply drop content. Orders and contracts are much different than they were previously. They're actually much better now than they were previously. We have a new division that was added to the game for free, and they even revamped the entire division system from the ground up to make it so they're all much better than they were before and more competitive than they were before. I'm not here to say that every update has been good, because I'd be lying to you. Not every update has been fantastic, but they've given us a record amount of updates this year, and I think the fact that they keep doing this is a good sign of things to come for the Call of Duty franchise, because Call of Duty World War II, regardless of your personal opinion, like my opinion, your opinion, anybody's opinion, regardless of all that, I think we can agree that it raises the bar for future Call of Duty games to support their community in a way that they haven't before, right? Like, I think that Black Ops 4 is going to be a much better game as a result of the precedents that were set here in Call of Duty World War II, because if there's one thing that we've learned, it's that if we put our minds to something, we can actually have an influence over how the game progresses over its life cycle. It's no longer a matter of they only talk to us whenever they give us a new weapon balance update and maybe a new map pack. Nowadays, they're talking to us all the time. They're making changes constantly, and that's a really good thing for the future of the Call of Duty franchise. So if you're one of those people out there who hasn't played since like November, sign in and give it a try. You own the game anyway. It's worth checking out, because I promise you it's much different now than it was back then. But like I said, not every change has been a good one, and I feel like if I'm going to be reviewing this game, I need to talk about the current supply drop situation and how Sledgehammer is handling DLC weapons. So to back things up here a little bit and go back to the beginning, when Winter Siege first came out, DLC weapons were the best that we've ever seen since supply drops were implemented back in Advanced Warfare. Like, things were actually really good, because we could get the new guns from supply drops, we could get them with our arm rate credits by talking to the quartermaster, and we could also go talk to Major Howard and complete between 35 and 50 multiplayer matches in exchange for a new gun. That was really cool, because we had 3 different ways of obtaining new content, which means that pretty much everybody that played during Winter Siege has all of the Winter Siege weapons, which was an awesome change of pace compared to what we were used to from games like Black Ops 3. Unfortunately, they decided to get rid of that system, or at least they altered the system significantly partway through the Resistance event, because they decided to do away with the entire Major Howard part of the system, which means that we can still obtain the new DLC weapons, but we are now much more reliant on supply drops and RNG than we were before, because we can't simply just play multiplayer matches in exchange for new guns. Now, it's important to remember that yes, we can still get new weapons by talking to the quartermaster and completing collections by spending arm rate credits, but that's more difficult now than it was previously, because after the supply drop revamp with Operation Shamrock and Knob, they have made it so we get less duplicates than we did previously, which means it's harder to obtain credits, and at the same time, it's also harder to get the prerequisites that we need to complete our collections, because they have added so much stuff to supply drops over the course of the past couple of months. So some very quick numbers for you guys. Right now in the supply drop loot pool, we have something to the effect of 120 weapon camos, 195 emblems, 213 pistol grips, 75 weapon charms, and 240 calling cards. That's not even taking into consideration all of the weapon variants and the experience bonuses and stuff like that. Like, we have an absurd amount of things in supply drops, which means that your chances of getting duplicates are not very high, because there are so many things in there. I didn't even bring up uniforms. How many uniforms are in this freaking game? And at the same time, your chances of getting a prerequisite for a collection item are not very good either, because with everything that's in this game right now, what are the chances of you either getting the weapon outright or getting one of the 7 or 8 items you need for your collection? The chances aren't very good, which is why we say that we're somewhat reliant on supply drops here. Yes, we can buy guns with armory credits. That is a thing we can do, but we need supply drops to get armory credits, and we also need supply drops to help make those collections a bit cheaper than they otherwise would be. Over the course of the past couple of days, I've been doing some testing just to see how many supply drops I can earn and how many credits I can get per day, and I won't bore you guys by going over every single detail. I feel as though this is going to be dry enough by talking about math and numbers here, but suffice it to say that with my very limited experience so far, keep in mind it's a very small sample size of just a couple of days. I'm going to be tracking this over the course of probably a couple months just to see how things go, but right now I'm getting a net gain of 1,000 to 1,600 armory credits per day. Now keep in mind that's coming from somebody who's a pretty dedicated player and a pretty above average player. I hop hop on, I do my orders, I do my contracts, I sign in, get my payroll probably 3-4 times a day, and I also get my daily login bonus, which has a ×3 multiplier. And even with all of that, I'm still only getting a net gain of 1,000 to 1,600 armory credits. Now, let's say hypothetically I want the M2 carbine rifle, which, by the way, I now have it. It's freaking incredible. Check out this clip here. But let's say hypothetically I do not have that weapon. I want to obtain it, but I was not lucky enough to get any collection items for it via supply drop. That means I need to buy the weapon at full price, which is 21,900 credits. And using my example of only being able to get a net gain of 1,000 to 1,600 credits per day, that means I will need to save up between 14 and 21 straight days to obtain this one weapon. And there are 18 other weapons currently available within Call of Duty World War II, some of which cost more than the M2 carbine, some of which are cheaper than the M2 carbine, some of which that can't even be obtained via collection for one reason or another. The entire system is reliant on supply drops. It always comes back to supply drops, and supply drops inherently are like playing a slot machine, right? Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, and I will say, with how the system is laid out, you do get lucky more times than you don't. Like, there are very few cases out there where somebody plays the game a ton and they do not end up getting all of the new weapons. Like, that's pretty rare, but still, there's a lot of luck involved, and that luck factor is what's turning off a lot of players. We do have those weekly contracts, which do work similarly to how Major Howard used to work back in the day, but those contracts rotate on a weekly basis instead of a daily basis, and like I said, we have nearly 20 DLC weapons, which means we are going to have to wait about 5 months before every single weapon's had a turn, and by that point, Black Ops 4 is going to be out, and probably 13 or so new weapons will have been released by that point. We've seen those weapons, of course, already in the game files. So if I were Sledgehammer, I would really work to revamp this entire system in one way or another, because while yes, dedicated players will probably get most of the DLC weapons, there are plenty of other people out there who will not get them, and with all the competition that Call of Duty has right now, I'm not sure it's in their best interest to be turning away people who play the game on a more casual level. There's nothing more frustrating than wanting to play a game, hopping on, and realizing that there's something in the game that you want that seems unobtainable to you, right? That's not a very good feeling, but aside from supply drops, I really don't have a whole lot of negative things to say about this game. I'm frustrated that Master Prestige players like myself don't get rewarded, though Sledgehammer did recently say they're looking into that, and there are a couple of smaller things that bother me, like leaderboards that go by score per minute and not overall score, but by and large, I am really happy with how Call of Duty World War II has progressed so far. I suppose I can't get through this review-style video without bringing up the big elephant in the room. I still do firmly believe that requisitions is a major problem and it needs to be either reworked or removed, but now that we're 6 months into the game's life cycle and Sledgehammer hasn't even mentioned it, I don't think anything's going to change, despite me really wishing that things would change. My biggest problem with requisitions isn't how it was intended to be used, because I think it was designed with the intention of allowing newer players to ease into the game and get that feeling of earning kill streaks, because kill streaks are a very big deal here in the Call of Duty franchise. If you're just starting out and you're, say, a 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 KD player, which most of us were at one point, then the prospect of earning something as menial as an artillery might seem like a monumental task. I know that's definitely true of younger Nero. Like, when I first started playing way back in Call of Duty 4, I was terrible. I was really bad. I had to, not because I want to, but I had to lay in a corner, lay up against a wall with a light machine gun, because heaven knows I need all 100 rounds, and that was the only way I could actually get kills. I was so freaking bad, and there are plenty of players out there today that are having that happen to them in Call of Duty World War II. That's where requisitions come in, and I can see why it has that value in that way, but the issue with requisitions is when good players abuse requisitions to get big streaks. Like, bad players using it to get an artillery, 1 per game, I don't care. That doesn't bother me in the slightest, but when good players are using requisitions to get paratroopers, carpet bombings, ball turret gunners, flat guns, and emergency airdrops every single match, well then suddenly I have a problem. Now, people like to counter that point by saying that streaks in this game aren't all that good, so requisitions isn't that big of a deal, and I agree that the streaks in this game are definitely weaker than the streaks of like Modern Warfare 2 or the original Black Ops, but the streaks in this game are still pretty good. Like, I don't know about you guys, but my paratroopers average about 4 kills minimum each time. My ball turret gunner gets me like 6 kills. Carpet bombings are pretty hit or miss, but depending on the map and depending on the game mode, it can be wildly good, like really, really freaking good. And that's not even taking into consideration when people use requisitions to get flat guns and emergency airdrops. The crux of the entire situation to me is the fact that there's no counter to somebody running requisitions. Like, everything in this game by and large has a counter, but how do you counter somebody having requisitions besides going off and having the game of your life? So hypothetically, you're playing domination and 2 2 or 3 people on the other team are running requisitions to get big streaks. The only thing you can do to hope to counter them is to go off in the early game, get yourself flat guns very early, and have them ready to go to kill off their first paratroopers. Then after that, you have to go off yet again and get between 1, 2, or maybe 3 more sets of flat guns to stop the rest of their streaks before the game ends. If you can't get 2 or 3 flat guns per match, you are screwed. And keep in mind, all this time, you need to be playing the objective, you need to be trying to win, you need to be getting all sorts of kills, and these other people who are calling in these big streaks, they don't have to play the objective, they don't have to get kills all that much, they can die 20, 30, or 40 times, ignore the objective and lose, and still get the biggest streaks in the game. It's incredibly frustrating. I don't think it's fair to say that requisitions is balanced because you only get your streaks once per match, because the streaks that people use requisitions to obtain are the ones that the best players in the world can't even get every few matches, let alone every single match. We're not talking about them calling in glide bombs and, fire pilots here. We're talking about ball turret gunners and paratroopers and stuff like that. Like, how often do you see somebody who's not running requisitions call in 2 sets of carpet bombings and paratroopers in a single match? I'm sure you've seen it plenty on YouTube, but in the actual game itself, it's not all that common. That's why requisitions to me is so ridiculously frustrating, but I don't want to rant about this anymore. Believe me, I could go on, but given the fact that we are now 6 months into this game's life cycle and Sledgehammer has not yet even mentioned the word requisitions, I don't see them removing it. So that's bad news for me, but good news for people that like it, I suppose. I'm not here to say that I'm right and other people are wrong, by the way. Like, we can have a differing opinion and still be friends. That's all cool. I'm just saying that from my perspective, this is something about the game that I have disliked since launch, and I figured I should mention it in my quote-unquote review of Call of Duty World War II. But ladies and gentlemen, all in all, I enjoy this game. Like, those are my major grievances, but by and large, I've had a lot of fun with Call of Duty World War II this year. So much so that I would say this is one of my favorite Call of Duty games of all time. Definitely in the top 5. I don't want to tell you guys what games I would rank ahead of it or behind it, because I'm sure that would cause a huge flame war down there in the comments. But suffice it to say, I think Call of Duty World War II is fantastic, and I'm excited to see what Sledgehammer Games has in store for us in the future. We know that 2 more map packs are coming. We know that more events are coming down the pipeline, likely a very big one in the summer like we had last year. I really hope we have Days of Summer for Call of Duty World War II. And we also know that a minimum of 13 new weapons are going to be added to the game as well. The future looks very bright for Call of Duty World War II, and just as a perfect way to wrap up this video here, guys, I can't make this up. While I was recording this, Sledgehammer put out a new weapon balance update. I can't even get through my review video without them adding something new to the game that I should mention in my review video. So I'll put a link down there in the description to the patch notes. But what they've actually done here today is apparently, they hope they fixed it, but you never know with Sledgehammer. They apparently have fixed the issue where when you're in a lobby with a level 1000, it lags out the entire lobby essentially. Apparently that's been fixed, and they have also rebalanced a bunch of different weapons. Specifically, the ITRA burst has been nerfed. They nerfed its burst cooldown, its fire rate, its recenter time, and they also made it so it's not as good with advanced rifling. No doubt this nerf is due to what the competitive pro players were saying, because those guys said the gun was way too good, and Sledgehammer likes to bow down to those guys. They buffed up the fire rate on the Gewehr yet again. They nerfed the aim down sight speeds and the sprint out times of the bar, and they improved the accuracy of the P08, the M1911, and the 9mm SAP. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't even get through a review without them updating the game in one way or another. It's absurd how often they update this game, which is why I think I'm enjoying it as much as I am. Like, if they would have left the game as it was back in November, I honestly don't think I'd still be playing. There wasn't enough content or enough things to do back then, but now that we're 6 months into the game's life cycle and they've changed up countless things about the game, I am really enjoying it, and I'd love to hear what you guys think down there in the comment section below. What is your review of Call of Duty World War II now that we are 6 months in? I can't wait to read that. And really quickly, here at the very end, I would like to thank you guys so much for all the continued support over the course of the past couple of months. Like, you guys have been fantastic, especially recently. Things have been really good, and my channel, maybe it's I'm just feeling super nostalgic, but my channel turns 7 years old in a couple of months. That is absurd to me. YouTube has been such a fantastic journey, and every day I love uploading my videos, and I see the notification squad down there. I see so many faces, both old and new, and whether you've been here for nearly 7 years, or if you've been here for 7 days, or if you just subscribed today, it doesn't matter. Thank you so much. You guys are fantastic. But without getting too sappy here at the end, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts and feedback on Call of Duty World War II down there in the comment section below, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.